Imagine walking through a peaceful village, only to realize the locals avoid certain streets after dark. Why? Because these places are haunted by real ghosts. From screaming skulls to phantom horsemen, the UK's most beautiful villages hide terrifying secrets. Tonight, we're uncovering 10 haunted villages where the past never died, and the dead still walk. Don't turn up the volume, you might hear something you can't unhear. Let's begin. If you enjoyed these terrifying hauntings, hit subscribe so you never miss another ghostly journey. Let me know if you'd like any tweaks. 1. Plucklay, Kent. Nestled in the heart of Kent, the picturesque village of Plucklay holds a dark secret. It's reputedly the most haunted village in England. With over a dozen documented ghosts, its charming cottages, ancient woods, and quiet lanes hide eerie tales that have terrified locals for centuries. The village's history is steeped in tragedy, betrayal, and restless spirits, making it a magnet for paranormal investigators and brave visitors, though few dare to walk its paths after sunset. One of the most infamous specters is the Red Lady, a sorrowful figure said to haunt St. Nicholas churchyard. Clad in a crimson gown, she is believed to be the ghost of a noble woman who died of a broken heart, endlessly searching for her lost child. Witnesses claim to see her drifting between the gravestones, her face etched with grief. Nearby, the Black Horse Inn is home to another phantom, a mischievous poltergeist that moves objects, whispers in empty rooms, and even shoves unsuspecting guests. The inn's cellar, once a smuggler's hideout, is said to echo with ghostly laughter and the clinking of long-forgotten contraband. The village's most gruesome tale revolves around the Screaming Woods, officially known as Deering Woods. Locals avoid this dense thicket after dark, claiming it's haunted by the spirit of a highwayman who was brutally murdered there. His agonized screams are said to pierce the night, accompanied by phantom footsteps and shadowy figures darting between the trees. Some even report an unnatural silence, as if the woods themselves are holding their breath before unleashing their horrors. Then there's the Watercress Woman, an elderly ghost who appears near a stream where she once sold her goods. Legend says she fell asleep by a smoldering fire and burned to death. Now her charred, hunched figure is spotted shuffling near the water, her faint cries carried on the wind. Another tragic spirit, the Hanging Man, lingers near an old oak tree where a farm laborer took his own life. His dangling silhouette has been seen swinging in the moonlight, vanishing when approached. Despite its beauty, Plucklay's haunted reputation is so strong that some residents refuse to speak of the ghosts, fearing they might attract their attention. Paranormal activity is frequent, phantom coachmen, spectral soldiers, and unexplained lights have all been reported. Whether these apparitions are echoes of the past or something more sinister, one thing is certain: in Plucklay, the dead don't rest quietly. Those who visit may leave with more than just memories, perhaps even a ghostly follower, clinging to them long after they've gone. 2. Pendle Hill Village. The mist-shrouded village surrounding Pendle Hill in Lancashire carries a chilling legacy, one of witchcraft, vengeful spirits, and a darkness that still lingers after 400 years. In 1612, this quiet corner of England became the stage for one of the most infamous witch trials in history, where 12 people were accused of consorting with the devil. 10 were hanged, and their restless souls are said to still wander the land, whispering curses on the wind. At the heart of the horror is Malkin Tower, the crumbling ruin where the accused witches allegedly gathered to plot murder and dark magic. Locals avoid the area after sunset, claiming the air grows unnaturally cold and disembodied voices mutter in an ancient tongue. Some have seen shadowy figures darting between the stones, their eyes gleaming with malice. One of the most feared spirits is Old Demdike, the matriarch of the Pendle witches, whose ghost has been spotted near the tower, her tattered shawl fluttering as she points a bony finger at passers-by, a silent warning to those who dare disturb her cursed resting place. Nearby, the Black Bull Inn in Rough Lee is said to be haunted by Alice Nutter, one of the condemned witches. Unlike the others, Alice was a wealthy woman, and her execution shocked the village. Her ghost, dressed in fine but rotting 17th-century garb, has been seen drifting through the inn's corridors, her face twisted in silent anguish. Glasses shatter without cause, fires snuff out abruptly, and guests report waking to the sensation of unseen hands tightening around their throats. But the terror doesn't end there. Pendle Hill itself is a beacon for the supernatural. Hikers have reported hearing eerie chanting rising from the earth, while others tell of a phantom black dog, a hellish beast with glowing red eyes, that stalks those who wander too close to the old hanging sites. Some believe it's the familiar spirit of the witches, still bound to the land, seeking revenge. Even the village churchyards are not safe. Visitors to St. Mary's Church in Newchich claim to feel icy fingers brush their necks, while the graves of the accused are said to tremble on stormy nights. The bravest, or most foolish, who venture to Pendle during Halloween swear they've seen the silhouettes of hanged men swaying from invisible nooses, their lifeless eyes following every move. To this day, locals speak in hushed tones about the witch's curse, warning that those who mock the dead or seek out the horrors of Pendle Hill may find themselves marked by the same darkness. Whether superstition or something far more sinister, one thing is certain: in this village, the past is never truly buried. And the witches are still watching. 3 Borley, Essex. The tiny, forgotten village of Borley in Essex carries a reputation so dark it earned the title of the most haunted village in England long before its more famous rectory burned to the ground. Nestled among lonely fields and whispering trees, Borley's very air seems thick with unease, a place where shadows move when no one is there, and ghostly figures drift across the lanes at twilight. The heart of its terror lies in the tragic history of the Borley rectory, but the surrounding village holds its own nightmares, stories passed down in fearful murmurs by those who still live in its eerie embrace. Before the rectory became infamous, locals spoke of a phantom nun who paced the road between Borley and nearby Liston, her head bowed in eternal sorrow. Legend claims she was a French Benedictine sister who fell in love with a monk from a Borley monastery centuries ago, their affair ending in her murder and his execution. To this day, witnesses report seeing her pale, veiled figure gliding along Nun's Walk, her lips moving in a silent prayer before she vanishes into the mist. Some have heard the rustle of her robes, smelled the faint scent of incense, only to turn and find nothing but empty darkness staring back. But the nun is not the only lost soul trapped in Borley's grip. The old village churchyard is said to be a hotbed of paranormal activity, with reports of ghostly chanting, phantom footsteps, and the sensation of unseen hands pulling at clothing. One grave, in particular, is avoided even by daylight, that of Charles Edward Long, a former rector whose spirit is rumored to rise from his tomb on certain nights, his face twisted in rage. Those who've dared linger near his resting place swear they've heard growls, as if something inhuman guards his bones. Then there are the phantom coaches, thundering down Borley's lanes in the dead of night, their horses wild-eyed and spectral, their drivers headless. The sound of wheels and hooves has woken villagers for generations, though no tracks are ever found come morning. Some believe these apparitions are tied to a long-ago tragedy, a wedding party slaughtered on their way to Borley, doomed to replay their final journey for eternity. Even the land itself seems cursed. Farmers tell of crops withering overnight, of livestock panicking at unseen terrors, and of cold spots so intense they freeze the breath in one's lungs. The few who still live here lock their doors early, refusing to speak of what they've seen, or felt, lurking in the village's empty lanes after dark. Because in Borley, the dead do not sleep. They wait. And they watch. For Dartmouth, Devon. The historic port town of Dartmouth in Devon may charm visitors with its cobbled streets and medieval charm by day, but when the sun dips below the harbour, an older, darker presence stirs. Centuries of smuggling, piracy, and violent death have left their mark here, saturating the very stones with restless energy. Locals speak in hushed tones about the things they've seen, shadowy figures vanishing down alleyways, ghostly sobs echoing from abandoned cellars, and the unmistakable feeling of being watched from the inky blackness of the River Dart itself. One of the most persistent phantoms is the flames of Bayard's Cove, where witnesses report seeing spectral fires blazing along the quayside before flickering out without a trace. These unnatural flames are tied to a gruesome 16th-century tragedy, a ship packed with gunpowder exploding in the harbour, killing dozens in an inferno so intense it scorched the stones. On certain fog-laden nights, the screams of burning sailors are said to carry on the wind, mingling with the phantom crackle of flames that give off no heat. Some claim to have seen charred figures staggering along the waterfront, their skeletal hands reaching out as if begging for help that never came. The Cherub Inn, a cozy harborside pub with a sinister past, is another hotspot for supernatural activity. Built atop a smuggler's tunnel, its cellar is avoided even by staff, who report hearing desperate scratching from behind the walls, perhaps the trapped spirit of a contraband runner sealed alive in the passage. Upstairs, the ghost of a heartbroken barmaid named Lucy lingers, her sobs echoing through the corridors. Legend says she threw herself from the inn's window after her sailor lover never returned from sea. Guests have awoken to the sensation of icy fingers stroking their cheeks, only to find the room empty, save for the faint scent of saltwater and roses. But Dartmouth's most terrifying spectre haunts the Butter Walk, a row of 17th-century buildings with a macabre history. Here, the ghost of a plague doctor has been seen stalking the arcades, his beaked mask and tattered robes materializing from the shadows before vanishing into thin air. Those who encounter him speak of an overwhelming dread, as if his hollow eyes carry the weight of countless deaths. Some believe he's not a ghost at all, but something far worse, a malevolent entity that feeds on fear, growing stronger with every shudder it elicits. Even the river itself seems alive with malice. Fishermen tell of an unseen force that tugs at their nets, while midnight walkers along the embankment report hearing whispered threats rise from the black water below. Whether victims of long-forgotten crimes or something more ancient lurking beneath Dartmouth's picturesque facade, one thing is certain, this town's beauty is only skin-deep. Scratch the surface, and the past bleeds through. And the past here is anything but peaceful. 5 Chillingham, Northumberland. The village of Chillingham in Northumberland crouches in the shadow of its infamous castle, a place so saturated with suffering that even the air feels heavy with echoes of the damned. But the surrounding village, with its weathered stone cottages and narrow, twisting lanes, holds horrors of its own, whispers of things that slink through the night, drawn by centuries of spilled blood and unquiet graves. Locals here lock their doors before dusk and speak cautiously of the grey folk, the spectral remnants of those who met cruel ends in Chillingham's dark history. At the village's edge lies the Chillingham churchyard, where the dead are said to walk. Visitors report seeing pale, emaciated figures crouching among the tombstones, their hollow eyes tracking the living with unnatural hunger. These are believed to be the spirits of prisoners who starved to death in the castle's dungeon, now cursed to eternally crave what they were denied in life. One grave, conspicuously unmarked, is avoided by all. Those who've stood near it speak of a sudden, crushing despair, as if the earth itself mourns the nameless soul buried below. The old village well is another site of dread. Centuries ago, it was used to dispose of plague victims, their bodies tossed into the depths to prevent contagion. Now, on still nights, the sound of choked gargling rises from the dry shaft, followed by wet, dragging footsteps that circle the well's rim. Dogs refuse to go near it, snarling at empty air, while children whisper of a wet lady who climbs from the darkness, her bloated fingers leaving damp trails on the stones before she vanishes at dawn. But the most feared entity in Chillingham is the Blue Boy, a phantom whose origins lie in a hidden chamber of the castle, where the skeletal remains of a child were found walled alive behind ancient bricks. His mournful wails once echoed through the castle corridors, accompanied by an eerie blue glow. Now, villagers claim he's escaped his prison. Sightings describe a small figure in tattered period clothing, his face frozen in a silent scream, appearing at bedroom windows or standing motionless in moonlit fields. Those who meet his gaze report waking with inexplicable bruises in the shape of tiny handprints, as if something tried desperately to claw its way into their world. Even the animals here seem touched by the supernatural. The famed Chillingham cattle, a ghostly white herd kept near the castle, are said to be watched over by the spirit of a medieval huntsman, his arrow-riddled corpse sometimes seen limping between the trees. And beneath it all, the village itself seems to breathe, a living, malevolent thing. Visitors often speak of an oppressive weight, a sense of being studied from every shadow. Because in Chillingham, the past isn't just remembered. It lingers. And it hungers. 6. Gretna Green, Scotland. Gretna Green, nestled just across the Scottish border, is famed for its romantic runaway weddings, but beneath its quaint charm lurks a darkness few dare to acknowledge. The village's blacksmiths once hammered out hasty marriages for eloping couples, but not all love stories here ended happily. Some ended in bloodshed, betrayal, and restless spirits that refuse to move on. Locals avoid certain lanes after sunset, whispering of phantom carriages that appear without drivers, of ghostly brides weeping in the mist, and of something far older, far darker, that watches from the ancient woods. The most infamous spectre is the Grey Lady of Gretna Hall, a once grand hotel now haunted by the spirit of a jilted bride. Legend claims she was abandoned at the altar in the 1800s and hanged herself in the attic. Guests report waking to the sound of rope creaking under an invisible weight, while others have seen her gaunt figure drifting through corridors, her tattered wedding gown trailing behind her like a shroud. Some hear her whispering a name, always the same name, before the air turns icy and the scent of rotting roses fills the room. Staff refuse to enter the attic alone, claiming something up there breathes in the darkness, waiting to repeat its tragic end with any living soul who lingers too long. But the horror doesn't end there. The old blacksmith's shop, where countless couples pledged their love, is said to be stalked by a more sinister presence, a shadowy figure known only as the blacksmith's judge. Witnesses describe a tall, skeletal man in 18th-century garb, his face obscured by a wide-brimmed hat, standing motionless near the anvil. Those who meet his gaze are overcome with an inexplicable terror, as if staring into the eyes of something that was never human. Some believe he's the ghost of a cruel magistrate who punished runaway lovers, while others fear he's something far older, a pagan entity that demands tribute for the marriages forged on this cursed ground. The surrounding countryside holds its own nightmares. Sark Bridge, a crumbling stone crossing, is avoided even by daylight after numerous reports of a phantom carriage careening off its edge, the screams of its passengers echoing before the sound vanishes into the river below. And in the dense thickets of Gretna woods, travelers speak of a ghostly piper whose mournful dirge leads them astray, his music growing louder until they realize, too late, that no living man could play a tune so perfectly out of time with this world. To this day, Gretna Green's romantic facade hides a chilling truth: not all vows made here were kept. Some were broken by death itself. And the dead, it seems, have long memories. Those who mock the stories or wander the village's lonely paths at night may find themselves part of its next ghostly tale, one whispered in fear for generations to come. 7. Llanvapley, Wales. The tiny Welsh village of Llanvapley, hidden in the folds of Monmouthshire's brooding hills, holds a secret so chilling that even nearby townsfolk speak its name in hushed tones. At first glance, it appears as nothing more than a sleepy cluster of cottages gathered around an ancient church, but those who linger after sunset tell of restless spirits, cursed graves, and a darkness that clings to the land like a shroud. The heart of the horror lies in St. David's Church, a crumbling sanctuary where the dead are said to walk, their whispers carried on the wind through the yew trees. The most feared presence is the Black Abbot, a spectral monk who glides through the churchyard with a rustle of unseen robes. Witnesses describe a faceless figure, its form wreathed in shadows, standing motionless before certain graves before vanishing into the night. Legend claims he was a 12th-century cleric who dabbled in forbidden rites, binding souls to the village through unspeakable rituals. Those who encounter him report a suffocating dread, as if the very air thickens with ancient malice. One villager, foolish enough to follow the apparition, was found the next morning curled in the church porch, alive but mute, his hair turned white, his fingers clutching a handful of rotted grave soil. But the Black Abbot is not the only terror here. The White Lady of Llanvapley Lane appears on misty nights, her skeletal hands clutching the rusted bars of an infant's cradle. She is said to be the ghost of a young mother who drowned her illegitimate child in the River Monnow and hanged herself from the church bell tower. Travelers who spot her are warned not to speak, for those who do claim to hear a ghastly lullaby moments before an unseen force drags them toward the water's edge. Even the local pub, the Harp Inn, bears the scars of her hauntings. Glasses shatter without cause, and the scent of damp petticoats lingers near the hearth, though no fire burns. Beneath the village itself, something older stirs. The Devil's Hollow, a sunken grove of twisted oaks, is avoided by all but the reckless. Here, the ground is said to pulse like a living thing, and those who stand too long report feeling skeletal fingers brush their ankles from beneath the earth. Local farmers tell of livestock found drained of blood, their bodies arranged in strange patterns, while others whisper of a doorway hidden among the roots, a threshold to somewhere far worse. Few outsiders believe the tales, until they spend a night in Llanvapley. Then they hear the midnight tolling of the church bell, though the ropes hang still, see the flickering corpse lights dancing in the graveyard, or feel the unmistakable grip of icy hands pushing them toward the waiting dark. The villagers know the truth, some places are born cursed. And in Llanvapley, the curse is very much alive. 8 Glastonbury, Somerset. Glastonbury, with its ancient tor rising like a crooked finger against the Somerset sky, has long been a beacon for pilgrims seeking the mystical. But beneath the New Age shops and Arthurian legends pulses something far older and darker, a place where the veil between worlds wears thin, where pagan ghosts walk alongside Christian saints, and where the very earth remembers the blood spilled upon it. Locals tread carefully here, especially after dusk, when the mists coil like grasping hands and the ruins of Glastonbury Abbey exhale the whispers of the dead. The most infamous spectre is the Glastonbury monk, a hooded figure seen drifting through the abbey cloisters, his skeletal hands clutching a rusted censer that swings without a breeze. Witnesses describe the choking scent of charred flesh preceding his appearance, a grim reminder of Abbot Whiting, burned at the Tor during Henry VIII's dissolution of the monasteries. Those who cross his path report an unnatural coldness, as if death itself has paused to regard them. But the monk is not alone in the ruins. Visitors speak of shadowy processions moving through the nave, their chants echoing in a tongue not heard since the Dark Ages, while others claim to have seen a black hound with eyes like smoldering coals padding silently between the graves, its muzzle forever stained with spectral blood. Yet the true heart of Glastonbury's horror lies beyond the abbey, atop the Tor. The winding path to its summit is said to be a labyrinth of spirits, phantom druids who materialize between the hawthorn trees, their mouths moving in silent curses, and the Grey Sisters, a trio of wraiths seen kneeling at the tower's base, scraping at the stones with bone-thin fingers as if trying to dig up some long-buried sin. Climbers who linger too long at sunset often report losing time, finding themselves suddenly at the bottom of the hill with no memory of descending, their clothes reeking of wet earth and their pockets filled with strange, twisted roots. Even the town's holy wells are touched by the uncanny. The Chalice Well, revered for its healing waters, has a darker twin, the Blood Spring, where the iron-rich water runs scarlet. Locals whisper that on certain nights, the spring bubbles violently, as if something beneath is struggling to surface. Those foolish enough to drink from it after dark tell of visions, a drowned woman in a crown of thorns, a procession of faceless knights, or worst of all, their own reflection, but decades older, screaming soundlessly from beneath the water's surface. Glastonbury's ghosts are not like others. They do not merely haunt, they remember. They watch. And they wait. For what, none can say. But the villagers know one thing for certain, when the Tor's shadow stretches long across the land, it is not just darkness it casts. It is an invitation. And some invitations, once accepted, cannot be undone. 9 Anwick, Lincolnshire. The quiet Lincolnshire village of Anwick holds a secret in its churchyard that has terrified locals for centuries. A secret that screams. Hidden within the walls of St. Edith's Church lies the infamous Anwick skull, a yellowed, grinning relic with a history so macabre that even hardened ghost hunters tread lightly here. Legend claims it belongs to a despised 18th-century drunkard named Old Ned, whose corpse was exhumed and decapitated after his death, his head passed between families like a cursed heirloom. But Ned's skull refuses to rest. Those who've dared disturb it tell of nights filled with unearthly shrieks, of furniture overturned by invisible hands, and of a voice in the dark that snarls obscenities in the reek of stale ale. The first horror occurred in the 1800s when a farmer locked the skull in his barn, only to wake to the sound of his livestock screaming. He found his cattle stampeding in panic, their hides lashed by unseen whips, their eyes rolled back in terror. The skull sat perched atop a hay bale, its jaw clacking though no wind stirred the air. When thrown into the river, it allegedly floated upstream against the current, returning to the churchyard by dawn. Today, it rests behind an iron grill in the church, but visitors still report hearing muffled laughter near its case, followed by the sickening crack of bones being ground together. Yet the skull is not Anwick's only terror. The devil's footprint, a scorched hoof mark burned into the church's ancient door, is said to pulse with heat when touched, a remnant of a long-ago exorcism gone wrong. Locals swear the surrounding graves shift position overnight, as if the dead are restless. And in the nearby Anwick Fen, will-o'-the-wisps lure wanderers into the marshes, where some have vanished without a trace, only for their hats or shoes to wash up days later, stinking of decay and tangled with strands of hair not quite human. But the most chilling account comes from the last verger to handle the skull. After drunkenly taunting it in 1950, he fled the church, babbling about Ned's friends coming for him. He was found dead at dawn, his face frozen in a scream, his hands clutching his throat in a grip so tight his fingernails had drawn blood. The coroner ruled it a seizure, but villagers knew better. They'd heard the shrieks that night. Not just one voice. Many. Now, only the bravest visit St. Edith's after dark, and even then, they avoid the back pew where cold draughts coil like breath on the neck, where whispers rise from empty spaces, and where something watches from the shadows with hollow, hungry eyes. Because in Anwick, the dead don't just tell their stories. They scream them. And sometimes, something screams back. 10 Lower Slaughter, Cotswolds. The idyllic Cotswold village of Lower Slaughter, with its honey-colored cottages and babbling stream, exudes storybook charm, until dusk falls. Then, something far older stirs beneath its picturesque surface. The River Eye, which winds through the village like a silvery ribbon, takes on a sinister gleam under moonlight, its gentle murmur sometimes rising to a chorus of whispers. Locals avoid the old stone bridge after dark, speaking in hushed tones of the phantom horseman who gallops through the village at midnight, his mount's hooves striking the cobbles without sound, his rusted armor dripping with spectral river water. The legend tells of a 17th-century cavalry officer who drowned in the river during a storm, dragged under by his own heavy breastplate. His ghost is said to ride eternally along the water's edge, searching for his lost sword, but those who've glimpsed him swear he's searching for something else entirely. Witnesses describe an unnatural stillness preceding his appearance, birds falling silent, the river freezing mid-ripple, before the air fills with the stench of wet rust and rotting reeds. Some claim he dismounts near the old mill, his hollow eyes scanning the village as if counting potential victims. A visiting photographer once captured a blurred figure in period dress standing waist-deep in the river, though the water that day had been crystal clear and barely knee-high. But the horseman isn't Lower Slaughter's only revenant. The old mill, now a luxury hotel, harbors darker secrets. Guests in room 7 report waking to the sensation of icy fingers tracing their cheek, only to find the imprint of a small hand, a child's, flushed red on their skin. Staff whisper of a white lady who materializes in the wine cellar, her waterlogged gown leaving damp footprints that vanish as they're followed. The mill wheel, still turning after centuries, sometimes groans to a stop despite strong currents, as if unseen hands clutch its paddles from beneath the dark water. Most chilling are the river voices. On foggy mornings, villagers have heard entire conversations rise from the stream. Snippets of arguments, laughter, even screams, though no one stands on the banks. Some recognize the voices of long-dead neighbors, others hear dialects not spoken for centuries. A local historian who tried recording these phenomena was found half-drowned in 6 inches of water, babbling about the ones who live under the stones. To visit Lower Slaughter by day is to fall in love with its beauty. But stay past sunset, and you'll understand why even now, villagers throw salt into the River Eye on All Hallows' Eve, a silent offering to whatever walks there in the dark. Because in this perfect English village, the past doesn't just linger, it rides. And it remembers every slight, every scream, every soul ever claimed by its deceptively gentle waters.